Staying on the side of criminal justice, really interesting story has come out from the United States. It's quite brutal, in fact, that the state of Alabama has put someone to death for the first time using nitrogen gas asphyxiation after, in fact, the state last year in 2022 failed to put this individual to death, where they sought to kill him via lethal injection and failed for a period of 2 hours to identify a vein to administer the drugs. Kenneth Smith, 58, committed his crime over 30 years ago. Has the state done the right thing by carrying out this sentence?
No, and I actually don't think that the state should ever have the power to kill another individual in this way as punishment directly. I mean, of course, in war, it's a very, very separate issue. I do think what's interesting, though, I mean, I cannot imagine the sort of agony that he had to go through, having previously been attempted to be killed by the state, of course, when they couldn't find the vein, and then spending 30 years on death row. I mean, it's actually interesting. Even from a sort of funding perspective, it often costs more to the state to put people on death row than it does to give them a life sentence. I mean, again, the death penalty and conversations about whether or not the state should have the capacity to do this is a wider conversation that often does circle around US politics. I don't think that it's okay, and I actually think that often a sort of a larger punishment would be to serve that death sentence. I often think that it's an easy way out.
But it's not all American states, but it's quite common in the United States that they have the death penalty. Finally abolished in the United Kingdom in 1998 by Tony Blair's government. We haven't seen an execution in the UK since 1964. The year after that, it was paused indefinitely, but it took until the late 1990s for it to disappear from our statute books. But, Becca, there's quite a lot of polling done about this, and a slight majority of people in the UK would support the reintroduction of the death penalty, wouldn't they?
I think what people want is people want to feel like justice is served to people that commit horrendous crimes. And I think oftentimes people do feel like, we see people going into the prison system, they don't serve their full sentences, life doesn't mean life. We get very, very attached to, high-profile crimes like what we saw in Nottingham. And I think what people want, actually, is faith in the justice system. There are lots and lots of reasons, and I think Reem makes a great case. The state does not get to decide who lives and dies. How do you account for miscarriages of justice, the cost, the expense, and also, looking at what happened in Alabama last night. I mean, Alabama said that was going to be a death that was going to take, 30 seconds? I mean, he didn't die for 22 minutes. And the description of what the observers of the execution saw, I mean,
it's all very well to call it horrendous, though, isn't it? But here in the UK, you say people have got to have faith in justice as a majority, a very slim majority, but quite recent polling took place in December 2023, just less than a month ago, just over a month ago. A majority of people support it. So if we should have a justice system that people support, surely maybe the death penalty should be part of the UK justice system for, say, example, child murderers. I think lots of people might support that.
I think people want to see child murderers, people who commit horrendous crimes, behind bars for a long time. I think what people say when they want the death penalty is they don't necessarily believe that they get the kind of justice that they think those people warrant from the justice system. I think if we actually think about the realities of the death penalty in the United Kingdom, it's deeply uncomfortable, difficult to legislate, and again, to Reem's point, the state deciding who does and doesn't live, I think, sits uncomfortably with all of us.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think we're going to have a conversation about why we got rid of the death penalty in this country in the first instance. There were a couple of cases in the early 1960s where effectively people were put on death row and then again killed by the state when there wasn't ample evidence. Or I believe that there was another case where a woman, I forgot her name, but a woman killed her husband, but she was under all of these different mental health issues, and so it meant that actually she probably wouldn't have had the death penalty if in retrospect. So I do think it's a wider conversation about why the justice system is failing so miserably.
But it's got to be a wider conversation about how we get support for the justice. I might just point out a majority of people just in this country still support the death penalty. But in fact, if you are sat at home watching this show today, we want to hear from you about whether we should reintroduce national service, but maybe you also want to get in touch about whether it's time Britain reintroduced death penalty. And the number is there on the screen. We want to hear from you. And don't forget to send your text in, because every Friday at the top of the second hour, we do the joy of text. I have to be careful how we say that. That is my evergreen joke. I do it every single week. The joy of text, and we want to hear from you. And we will read out your top text as chosen by the panel, whether you get in touch about whether we should reintroduce national service or, in fact, whether Britain should reintroduce the death penalty. And